please keep your microphone off unless invited to raise question. For question and answer, please use the Zoom. We will actually, for Q&A, we will keep it to the end so that it will not disrupt the speakers. And then for information, the webinar is recorded and will be shared publicly online. Okay, without further, I will introduce the first speaker. He's the editor-in-chief, one of the two editors-in-chief for this journal, Dr. Mohamed Eskandar Shah Muhammad Rashid. Okay. Doctor, please can start.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, Brother Raimi. This is just an introductory remark about the journals. We are waiting for our two keynote speakers to present the ideas and also their thoughts. First of all, I would like to thank World Scientific for giving us this opportunity to co-edit the journal, myself and also Dr. Saad, with the advice from prominent people like Professor Belal, Professor Mansour, Professor Ehsan, who are kind enough to be part of our advisory board as well. And we also have a group of associate editors, young emerging scholars from around the world. So I would probably say that the journal consists of a very good team, a combination of wisdom and also energies. Inshallah, our ideas is that to bring and forward this journal to a different level. Of course, it's a new journal. We have going through a process where people are still quite skeptical about whether they should send the paper to this journal or not, whether it's Scopus or whether this is highly ranked and cited and so on and so forth. But bear in mind, we are not starting this journal to be just another journal, but we are starting this journal to make a difference. And that's the whole idea about going through this process. So inshallah, the reason why we are having this talk is not just to introduce our speakers, Professor Abbas and also Professor Belal, but from their presentation, you probably understand the idea of this journal, what exactly that we are actually trying to achieve. So I will leave to the speakers itself because they will basically providing more input and also more framework in terms of the direction of this journal. But I just want to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Saad as a co-managing editor, board of advisors, all the prominent professors that we have, and also the team of associate editors around the world that have been supporting throughout the journal. Not forgetting Brother Raimi, who is the guest editor of this journal, who's been very instrumental in terms of putting this together, and also Miss Lee, who's actually hosting this event. So I would really thank you for taking your time to be part of this event, and hopefully together we can make a difference to this journal and also to Islamic finance. Thank you so much. Brother Raimi, over to you, inshallah.
Okay, I think people are coming in still, I think. Okay. So maybe we can start with Dr. Saad. Yeah, Dr. Saad. Okay, he's the other co-editor-in-chief. Okay, he will now speak a little bit about the journal. Dr. Saad, please. Your sound, yeah, your voice, your audio is lagging, Dr. Saad. Dr. Saad, your audio is lagging. Yeah. We cannot hear you, Dr. Saad. Maybe it's the internet. Maybe it's a bit lagging.
It was fine a few minutes back.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, Dr. San, we'll wait for you to settle your issue. So no, still we cannot hear you. Cannot. We still cannot hear you. Or maybe you can off your system for what? Okay.
Relog on, yeah.
Yeah, so probably, okay, while waiting.
We can wait for a few minutes.
Yes, yes.
Because he's going to introduce the journal also.
Okay.
Professors, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Perfect.
Loud and clear, Dr. Saad. Yes.
Perfect. Well
Apologies
done.
for the delay. We are still trying to fix this, but a lot of our students are here and they're very pleased to see you all delivering the session. Hopefully you can see them.
You see them.
I'll quickly talk about the journal. When Professor Belal and Dr. Eskandar reached out regarding the journal, it didn't take me long to basically accept their invitation. And the reason is, it was actually a personal reason why I accepted the invitation. Partially over the years, over more than a decade of research in Islamic finance, I felt that there are questions that I want to ask and answer for which there is no outlet. So how do you publish them? And for me, it was a big challenge personally. And we are very grateful to some of the earlier journals in Islamic finance, the special issues that we had from Pacific Basin, from JABO, which gave people like me the outlets to showcase and publish their work and to contribute to the discipline. But I felt there are many questions which need to be asked and which need to be answered. And for that, this journal was an important outlet. There are three aspects that I would like to focus on predominantly. Firstly, we felt very strongly that the current space of Islamic finance research suffers from a limitation that the research has to be generalized to a broader audience, which limits the kind of questions which we are also interested in. So one of the things we have done that our research, we would also accept articles which may be specific for an Islamic finance audience. Secondly, we felt very strongly that we'll be accepting a range of methodologies. So if you have an original idea and you would want to make a significant contribution to the discipline, we thought that we'll be more open to alternative ideas. Particularly, we also felt that teaching Islamic finance is an important area. So we will also be accepting articles that might contribute to the pedagogy of Islamic finance teachings to inspire the next generation of Islamic finance scholars. And lastly, we felt that there are certain core questions which need to be revisited again and again and to make them applicable to some of the important debates that are emerging. So our journal would look into some of the emerging areas like artificial intelligence, cryptocurrencies. That is something that's also on the cards as we revisit some of the core concepts of Islamic finance. So with that perspective, this journal was launched, and we are grateful to all of you for becoming a part of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Okay, today we are very grateful that we have with us a very senior, Professor Dr. Abbas Mirakhor to join us. Okay, please, Professor Abbas. I think you're muted, Professor Abbas.
Brother Raimi,
yes.
Let the Saad introduce Professor Abbas first, and then Dr. Saad moderate the Q&A for this.
Okay.
Dr.
Saad, please continue.
So Brother Rahimi will bring the credentials of Professor Abbas, and to be honest, he needs no introduction. He has every accolade in the Islamic finance industry that is of any worth. Professor Abbas has it. So rather than going through his very impressive set of accomplishments, I'll talk about three things about Professor Abbas. Firstly, he's an individual who had the first front row ticket to the evolution of Islamic finance. And he has not just seen Islamic finance evolve, he has been a participant in this evolution, both from the practical side and from in the realm of knowledge and ideas. So he has been with the industry since the very foundation, and that brings a significant amount of experience that he has. Secondly, he has made a lot of contribution to the ideas of Islamic finance. So the academic contribution that Professor Abbas has made over a few decades now is, I feel, is almost unparalleled in the academic circles. So that has been a great achievement. But most importantly, I would suggest that he has inspired at least one generation of Islamic finance academicians. So, and young scholars, he has been able to inspire them for the last few decades. And whenever I see his students, there's something interesting I found in them. I see a glimpse of him. So there is a glimmer of his ideas and his inspiration, and that for a professor, for a participant of Islamic finance, is coming from an academic. I think that's the biggest compliment I can give to Professor Abbas. So over to you, Professor, and happy to listen to your ideas.
بالله وبالله وفي سبيل الله وعلى ملة رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. Thank you very much, Dr. Saad, for that highly complimentary introduction. I hope some of it is true, but again, we have to, inshallah, hope that Allah will allow us a little bit more time to be able to at least do a little bit of more of those works that you have credited me with. But thank you very much. Professor Belal, thank you very much for inviting me to this session. I'm very happy to be here because, as we've always talked about, there is a need for this project. There has been a need for a long time, but I'm glad that at least through your initiative and initiative of Dr. Eskandar and Dr. Saad, we finally, alhamdulillah, we're coming to a point of seeing this project off the ground. And I have to commend and thank the scientific world for agreeing to this project, and also commend them for their wisdom and foresight, because they have managed, inshallah, to get a very important asset inside their portfolio of very impressive list of journals. And having this one added to that list, I think is going to help them further being recognized in a differentiated environment that the journal competition is today. And I was already impressed with the products and the list of all of those journals. Some of them, I have read some articles out of them, and frankly, over time, I've grown to respect the value of the scholarship, which is high on the priority list of this publishing company. So with that, let me just suggest that what I have heard so far about the journal and what I've read in terms of the mission statement of the journal and the involvement of the people both on the editorial board and on the advisory board gives me hope that finally we have come to see a journal being produced that is focused on quality and focused on value added of papers that it will accept for publication. The quality of the advisory board is absolutely astonishing. There's a huge, I was trying to count the number of years of experience of all of the people, and I got beyond 150 with the first 4 or 5. So, and the quality of their work, the respect which they hold, they're held in their respective professions, including Islamic finance and Islamic economics. Not to mention fabulous and exciting work of Dr. Belal in areas outside. You know, we've talked about how impressive his work was to me as a novice in the finance and quantum mechanics put together. And so with that, let me just suggest that I'm hoping this journal, above everything else, becomes a venue which allows critical thinking, which is sorely lacking in Muslim societies. I mean, it has been lacking for a very long time because of very well-known barriers, which people know but very seldom spoken of. Barriers such as exclusiveness, parochialism, rather than the universalism, which is expression of the Quran and expression of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then the scholarship that one looks at, there appears to be an intellectual ancestor worship of very few and select scholars of days and years and centuries gone by, as long as 1,000 years old. And every day, constantly, you see papers and articles cutting and pasting the same thing that are said about these people and about their ideas. I don't know how many papers one has to read and how many articles one sees in journals and how many presentations in conferences about the importance of 4 or 5 of these ancestors that are really worshipped intellectually. The problem is not that we must remember our inheritance from the past. The problem is that we get bogged down in a path dependency that, you know, this is what the past believed and this is what we believe. So what about it? What are we doing? How can we use this information to answer these very huge and intense problems that humanity is facing? So one of these, the emissions that perhaps this journal could do is encourage 2 things. One is critical thinking, meaning that the editorial board, the editors, and hopefully, inshallah, this journal will also be different in one aspect, that there will be a hands-on involvement of the very creative and excellent, you know, the brightest and the best advisory board in the quality of the papers that are going to be submitted and accepted by the journal to be published. That, you know, frequent meetings, at least, you know, 2-3 months before papers go to publication, to ensure that the question how much value added this article or this paper is bringing, and is it cut and paste, just like you see in many of the journals, in many of the articles, just repeating the same things over and over again. I don't know how many papers do you need to talk about Maqasid al-Sharia. Maqasid al-Sharia is a fiqh position. It has nothing to do with the intellectual underpinnings of trying to find solution to financial problems of the world. Maqasid al-Sharia, it started and had a whole different teleology, a whole different purpose. It was created by someone like Al-Juwayni, who was from Juwayn, in a village outside of Nishabur in Iran. And basically he was traveling back and forth from Medina and Mecca to these areas and faced the problems that people don't know Arabic, they didn't understand the Quran, they couldn't read the Quran and understand it, they could memorize it, but they didn't know what they were reading. So he came up with this idea of what is it that, what Sharia, which is basically a Quranic concept, it's immutable, it doesn't change, versus the fiqh, which is constantly changing. Whether just look at the list that he came up with 5 maqasid or 5 objectives of Sharia. And these 5 don't include the most important desidera of objective of Islam, which is social justice. It doesn't include justice. And it wasn't included because you had this path dependency over millennia that came down from Al-Juwayni to Ghazali to Shatibi, and finally, only in 20th century, the list was expanded to include social justice as one of the objectives. But it is in the Quran. It is essentially the central axis around which every idea regarding society, social relations, economic relations, financial relations rotate, basically social justice. So we can only talk so many times, we can only publish so many papers. We need to move to say, what problem is this solving for me? Can I get policy consideration out of this? What can I tell governments? It's sad that almost, half a century of work in this area, no Islamic government has yet accepted a framework of policy in order to implement the things that relate to economic well-being of the society in no Muslim country. So we have not been able to show that what is it that Islamic finance contributes to solving social problems. You can talk about maqasid al-Sharia forever, but you don't come up with solutions. The solutions are in the Quran. And so if critical thinking is really lacking among our researchers, has been always. The other thing is lack of historical perspective. For some reason, Muslim scholars have been immunized against history. The economic history of Muslim societies since the passing of Rasul to today are very, very critical. What went wrong? We know if you just sit down and look at the Quran and try to figure out exactly what a society envisioned by the Quran will have as an economic system or a financial system, you end up with something completely different what we have. So you ask the question, what went wrong? Why did we take this wrong path and stayed on it for 1400 years? These kind of questions is not raised. It sounds like we're immunized against considering analytic economic history of Muslim society. So I hope the journal will pay attention to these subjects, because past can, even though it cannot be used in order to predict what happens in the future. In other words, the social systems are not ergodic. They're just basically, you cannot base future predictions on past regularities. This is a major contribution of Keynes, basically the idea that in general, processes that are involved in economics, in finance, and in business are basically non-ergodic, and they cannot, past is not going to be very helpful in the future. And therefore, he came up with this idea of radical uncertainty. That allows me to get into this whole issue of what was assigned to me by Professor Belal and talk about the advantages or accomplishments of Islamic finance, and then up to now, and the challenges it faces in the future. In order to do that, let me suggest that there are two Islamic finances. One Islamic finance is risk transfer Islamic finance. The other one is risk sharing Islamic finance. Now, based on what has developed historically, the instruments that are available in Islamic finance that have come down to us from the past, and we stick to them like glue, and we are not either allowed by fuqaha or allowing ourselves, our intellectuals, to think beyond those. And these instruments are not, first of all, most of them, even mudaraba itself, we know that Rasul was quiet about it. He did not suggest that this is the way you have to go, mainly because he knew in the future there will be different ways of dealing with the risks of finance. And so basically, we are caught in this path dependence structure, which provides us with instruments that are basically very limiting and limited in their scope and in their application. But we are not, we think that we cannot go beyond those. Why? Because fuqaha tell us that these are what's available, and we appeal to authority. This is another problem that intellectuals face in Islam, is that the need to appeal to authority. If you write something on your own and put the title of Islam on it, it won't go unless and until you put somebody else's that is acceptable, and basically by this narrow parochial perspective, an exclusive perspective. You can't write about too much about Ibn Rushd to say that, look at, if you read him, he has so much to say about the economy, but nobody reads him because Ghazali didn't approve of him. And we, of course, consider Ghazali as basically an idol for all practical purposes, an intellectual idol for us. While most of the things that he had to say in Ihya Ulumuddin about the economics are wonderful for the time that he said it. But right now, you're not dealing with the kind of economy, with the kind of instruments of financial transactions that he was talking about. So we need to go beyond this. We need to transcend this trap of path dependency, this trap of intellectual hero worship, or ancestor worship. And we need to allow our individual scholars and researchers to think outside of the box, to ask critical questions. Why not this? And why this? There isn't there. For instance, I give you to me, very painful experience. The idea when this thing started, Dr. Saad was very kind to say I was there at the beginning. At the beginning, there was a chance that Islamic finance would have gone the way that the Quran intended to go, but it was sidetracked, basically because somebody thought it's maslaha, which is another trap for us. It's maslaha for us not to go that way. And so they had to engineer, and then fuqaha do that, engineer a way out of the dilemma of, if I go this way, I'm sure it's not going to work because it will not be accepted. But maybe I can devise this way to go. And what did they do? They basically manufactured an idea that, because the Rasul allowed 30% of a person's inheritance to be spent by him before his death, from there, they made an analogy and went to finance. So now you say 30% is okay for you. If a company has 30% debt, that's okay, that you can put a capital structure which you have debt. And the question in the Quran is 0-1, it's binary. You either have a ribawi system or you don't have one. And riba is very clearly defined within the Quran itself and within the teaching of Rasul. It's any addition to some principle is considered riba. So, you can go through fiqh arguments and twist it and torture facts to come up with a way to perhaps answer a maslaha situation, to say, I think for the Muslim society, it's better for us to go this way, even though that way deviates from the Quran. So this was at the beginning. There was a chance that we would go the right way. We go the risk-sharing way. And while I'm at it, I've read a few pieces on that. There is no risk-sharing in Islam. It is profit and loss sharing. And you go through these papers and you try to reason it out, and you can't, because then you end up saying, but this person really doesn't know statistics. It doesn't know probability, because what is profit and loss sharing? You go into a contract. This contract is ex ante. It hasn't yet been applied. So at the beginning, Islam requires you to determine what the risk sharing parameter, what the sharing parameter is. In other words, ex post, once the profit is realized, you share, but you share it with ex ante sharing parameter. Because you still don't know what happens to the project, you're in a condition of risk and uncertainty. So at the beginning, when you involve yourself in a partnership with somebody, you don't know what the outcome is going to be. All you know is the share parameter. So you have at best, even if we set aside radical uncertainty, at best you have a probability distribution. You are taking on a project that is within an industry. That industry has a history, and that history will tell you how successful or unsuccessful this is going to be, and you decide whether you want to invest or not. And if you invest, in what share you want from it, that's negotiated at the beginning, ex ante. So you're sharing the risk of a project that is going to be undertaken. So you talk about profit and loss sharing without consideration of initial ex ante probability distributions, which allowed you to reach a point of deciding that I want to go into this project and I want to this kind of a share from what I'm going to put in. So risk sharing basically is something that is for humans is very ubiquitous. You can see, for example, from sharing the risk of the road and all the way up to sharing the risk of a virus, all of us in it together. So historically, human beings, anthropologists tell us that the reason for the resilience and survival of humanity are three: cooperation, sharing, and reciprocity. Without these three, humanity would not have survived. There's a recent paper that came out by two, they call them geoanthropologists from Max Planck Institute. They found that 50 years ago in East and South Africa, people were sharing risks. They had a reciprocal relationship. And they've written papers that have really attracted the attention of people. 50,000 years ago is a long time. We know from history that even the Ice Age in Europe, people shared risk of their lives together. And risk sharing has been there from the time humanity came on earth. You go to the Quran or to Bible and read the story of Adam and Eve, you see that when the first humans appear, not necessarily at the time that Adam is born, because history goes beyond that. That risk sharing was an elemental factor of human life, and it's that old. And well, risk transfer is relatively new. It dates back only to 2,000 years before Christ, which basically appeared in Babylonia. Babylonians were basically a group of tribal Semitic people that moved from Arabian desert into southern Iraq and Mesopotamia. And they brought with them this idea of interest rate. And with them also came the collateral idea, and the collateral became actually human lives, and you had debt slavery began during the same time. So the history shows, history of European economics shows that in Germany, for instance, the idea of interest was not known until 800 BC. And so this is a relatively new. The newest of all is the risk shifting idea. The difference between, of course, risk sharing is that you share the risk of some future projects with someone else, depending on how much capital you put in, which is incidentally Arrow's idea in his book, and the idea of risk bearing. He said the optimal situation in finance is when everyone puts in capital according to their ability to provide it and take shares from the contingent outcome that comes up. This is in his book, and the idea of risk bearing. So basically, it's the idea of risk sharing is both old and new. But risk transfer actually came in with this whole idea of Babylonians, and then it spread from there to the rest of Europe. Before that, we have evidence, both archaeological and anthropological, that the economic activities in southern Iraq, northern Iraq, in Anatolia, in Turkey, in Western Syria were all done by risk sharing. People used to undertake projects, for example, going to the Persian Gulf area there in those islands, Indians would come and there would be trade, and the trade would always be based on somebody's capital put in and sharing the risk with the entrepreneur who would undertake to travel to buy, for instance, copper from southern Iran and take it to northern Anatolia and sell it there, that they used in order to create bronze. So this idea of risk sharing is exactly what the Quran is talking about, because if you say that there is no interest, which is the position of the Quran, then the alternative is risk sharing. There is no, there are only three ways you can manage the risk of uncertainty of the future. You can either share it, you can transfer it, or basically you can shift it. Risk shifting comes with the modern finance. It really doesn't quite appear until 1973, where the old Bretton Woods agreements broke down, where you had basically the system of exchange rates, which are basically par value. And in other words, a commodity money went out and non-commodity or fictitious money or fiat money entered the economies. From then on, one after the other, the economy became more and more financialized. And it's interesting in basically that we have known the whole evolution of these ideas of risk shifting, where two people agree to shift the risk of a transaction to a third party. The most vivid example of risk shifting occurred after the 2008 financial crisis, where banks and their depositors were bailed out. The risk of their transactions were shifted to taxpayers. So it is when a risk of a transaction is shifted to a third party without the third party knowing or consenting. So we have found in empirical studies that the present Islamic finance is a risk-shifting finance. It's not even risk transfer. It's the worst kind. So if one wants to look and say, what do we say up to now about what has been accomplished by Islamic finance? You say, if you have a question or metaphor of glass half full and half empty, the half full part is that Islamic finance has been able to establish itself within the framework and environment of risk transfer finance as a brand product. It's become special asset class within the risk transfer framework. So that is the risk transfer Islamic finance. Risk sharing Islamic finance is only a minor part of the financial institutions in Islamic countries. Very, very, I mean, we had predicted that in 81, 82 in a short paper on short-term asset concentration in Islamic finance, predicted that if we don't go totally by risk sharing, then what will happen is that in the future, all the assets in the portfolios of Islamic finances will all be short-term risk transfer assets. So the positive side is that this risk transfer Islamic finance has in fact established itself with a brand name, but with instruments that are basically risk transfer instruments that are debt-based and they are basically interest-based, no matter what you look at it. But because it's a brand name, it just like all brand names, it has a premium. So if you go and study, and this is a challenge for some young scholar to go and start looking at the cost of instruments that are called Islamic and are really dominating the portfolios of Islamic banks, and look at them and then consider comparing them, these assets, with similar assets in conventional finance. And you'll find out that at least there is about 150 basis point difference between the two instruments. So, this is a system that basically invents things and puts a label on it, brands it, and then sells the brand just like any capitalist society at a premium. Take the question of sukuk. There is no such a thing. You can go through the Quran, you will not find the word sukuk. You can go to the entirety of hadith literature, you will not find the names because it isn't there. But those who wanted to market bonds, regular debt-based bonds, to petrodollar countries and make money in the process, invented this. We know exactly when it was done, we know by whom it was done, and we know what the result of it was. In the Quran, you find only one word for sak, and it's in ayah 29 of Surah Az-Zariyat, is that when Malaika come to Ibrahim alayhi salam and give him the good news that he's going to have a son, and the Quran in this ayah says that his wife was an old woman, was so surprised that she sakkat wajhaha, that is, she hit herself as a surprise. He says, I am an old woman, not barren woman, how can I have a child? So sak basically meant slapping somebody else or slapping yourself. So for instance, if you walk out of a door and shut it very hard, it's called sak al-bab. So, this is sak. But sukuk, these guys are talking about, comes from, and that is also a singular word called check. And check is it came to Islam in 3rd century in Basra. It used to be a Persian word for exactly the check that you see today. That was called a check. And check was Arabized into sak in Basra, and then it is spread throughout the Muslim world. So now they have sukuk. So some of these things are really so serious. If you look at it from purely aqidah point of view, they border actually on fraud. That is, if someone would take these innovators of these particular instruments to court and say, you're selling me a bill of good, I think that in a fair situation in a court, they could win the case. Just like, in the 1990s, there were cases where people challenged a lot of banks because they said, what you told me I had was an Islamic finance. This isn't. They proved that it's actually an interest-based instrument. So this is what we can say about the present dominant financial system, financial framework called Islamic finance. But the other Islamic finance is the one that is based on risk sharing. We have the same fuqaha that talk about maslaha to have this interest rate based or debt based financial system, talk about the fact that there is this hadith or there is this maqula or whatever one wants to call it, that it is impossible for you to gain without taking risk along with it. But yet they continue to do guaranteed, government guaranteed sukuks that are being sold. And it actually surprises you to find that governments themselves fall into this trap of, there's no reason for them because they can, and they know what is going on, because when you talk to central bank governors, say, why is it that, Islamic finance is not being adopted? Why don't you adopt fully Islamic? They say, why? I can do much better in international interest rate-based, debt-based markets. It's much cheaper for me and a lot less troublesome. So virtually everybody who's involved knows it, but what those who don't know are the poor investors in Islamic countries, because blindly, uncritically, they accept the position that what we are being told or being sold is Islamic. So some of these questions are very critical. But then again, one has to say, completely outside of Islamic framework, but in the conventional framework, there is another advantage to this interest rate-based debt Islamic finance framework. You will know there is this framework called Arrow-Debreu general equilibrium framework. Basically, they tried to prove in very elegant mathematics what Adam Smith had said earlier, that if you have a private economy in which self-interest is the prime motivator of agents, that this system has an equilibrium, and that equilibrium is Pareto optimal. But there are conditions. Among the conditions, two most serious one is something called complete market. The other one is called complete contract. Complete markets means that for every asset, there is a market and there is a price. So there is an equilibrium in that price. But we know in reality, markets are not complete. They are incomplete. So that means they're suboptimal. They're not Pareto optimal or Pareto efficient. So anytime you have a market for an asset, then you're moving closer to optimality. So they say it's Pareto improvement. So you had demand among Muslims for an instrument that would serve their aqidah, that they can't deal with interest rate. And so this Islamic finance came in within the conventional framework and presented a market. In other words, it moves, so say it's a Pareto improving market. So in a way, it's a positive point if you think within the framework of conventional economics and finance and not within the Islamic Aqidah framework. So these are the advantages. And disadvantages are that you have a path dependency now that is now virtually impossible to create an incentive which draws Muslim financiers away from interest rate-based risk transfer Islamic finance into risk sharing. There's just too much money to be made. This was a very interesting book that came out in 2016, and unfortunately it went totally unnoticed and it didn't get the notice that it deserved. This was a book that was written by Mervyn King, who used to be the governor of Bank of England. It's called The End of Alchemy. It was saying that the present risk transfer system is untenable, unsustainable, and that it's held up by so many factors that are themselves on shifting sands. And he argued that basically alchemy, as you know, is to take a base metal and convert it into gold, except so far as we know that that's a myth. Except this one is real, where you take a very small base of deposits, convert it into a huge amount of credit, that basically making money out of thin air. And the bankers, Islamic bankers, are not ever going to be able to see enough incentive to replace the advantages they have by running an Islamic bank, which is basically non-Islamic. So this path dependency. It's taking Islamic finance further and further away from the path that was set by the Quran and by Sunnah of Rasulullah. I think I've gone way beyond the 40 minutes. I don't know. So let me just stop here and thank you again, Prof Belal, and thank you, the two wonderful editors and the advisory board and the editorial board. You have wonderful people, as you said, very young, energetic and productive people in your editorial board. And of course, the best and the brightest in the advisory board. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help you all. May He, inshallah, make our dreams and yours come true through this journal, inshallah. And may this journal guide our young, loving and lovable young researchers into thinking critically, asking critical questions, and find solutions to humanity's problems, which the Quran and the Sunnah of Prophet have already established and we can access.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you. Thank you, Prof Abbas. Saad, are you going to say something, or Mr. Rahimi?
Yeah, Dr. Saad, do you have anything to ask Professor Abbas.
Thank you, Professor. This was, as always, very useful, very refreshing, and really appreciate the deep insights that you are bringing to what if we can take one question? I'm conscious of the time, so if we can take one question from either the Zoom chat or if a student has a question, that would be useful. Anyone has a question? Go ahead. Yeah.
So we basically talked about how, for example, we're not supposed to be engaged in hero worship. When we talked about Imam Ghazali, we're not supposed to be hero worship him because the context has now changed. However, at the same time, when we see new arising financial issues, such as one we talked about food, so there's a room of manipulation here as well. If there is a room for manipulation here, and we're not, for example, retracing it back to our scholars of the past, then isn't there a chance that we will actually not end up with the correct answers? I understand that there is always, a spectrum of opinion on certain issues, but if we, for example, do not consult our scholars at all, then there is always a room for example, problems in existing and current financial issues. So how do we resolve that?
Professor, did you get a chance to listen, or do you want me to repeat it?
Yeah, we couldn't hear anything.
I didn't hear.
What the student is asking is, so where do you draw the line between hero worship and continuity from the past? So he said that at one point in time, hero worship, and you referred to certain personalities. So he's asking that how do you keep the balance where there is complete discontinuity from the past, which puts us in a place where we might be in a totally unstable, discontinuous path, as opposed to a complete, rigid, continuous, what you're referring to as hero worship. So what is the balance?
Yeah, well, thank you very much to the student. It's a very good question and very perceptive. And I think that what the answer will be is that it's not discontinuity. No one is asking. What we have is this selective worship of previous intellectuals which have contributed enormously, and then not being able to take it a step further and say, so what does it mean vis-a-vis the problems that humanity as a whole is facing? And why just these five? I can call you five, and I give you the names, and you can go and check the papers that have been published everywhere. These five, Jawaini, Shatibi, Ghazali, and very Ibn Khaldun. You look at these and say, okay, these had ideas. What can I do with them? This is the question. Continuity means carrying it forward, not just stepping and constantly saying he was the father of economics. First, he wasn't. Historically, if you study, he wasn't. But then constantly talking about his accomplishments. So supposing that he was everything you say he was, what about you? What are you contributing? You're writing an article. What does this article mean? What value does it add to thousands of other pages of papers that people have written about Ibn Khaldun, that have written about Ghazali and all the other people? And worst of everything else, this parochialism and this selective ancestor worship is that you leave out enormous amount of wonderful research and writings by contemporary people. Ask any average, even in Pakistan where you are sitting, ask any of your students, how many of them have really, really looked at the book by Allama Iqbal, rahmatullah alayhi, and considered the economic ideas. He has a small book in Urdu also in Islamic economics, not Islamic economics. How many of them have read that? How many of them have been able to find that book? And how many of them have considered that? Or ask, what about, Allama Said Nursi in Turkey? I mean, the guy wrote a phenomenal tafsir on the book, and there's lots of economic ideas in there. What about Malik bin Nabi? The guy wrote enormous stuff about our culture, about our problems, but why we are facing this constantly deteriorating social, economic, financial situation in the world. And what about, right in Malaysia, for example, you have a major Muslim philosopher. What economic students have looked at his work and say, what does this mean for arranging the economic system of Islam? And, I can go on and list the number of contemporary scholars. This is Shahid Mohamed Baqir Sadr in Iraq. His book came out, it's the first book that deals with the question of economics and actually challenges materialism and talks about what the Quran has to say about it. And a real iqtisad was presented by him. Very few people have even read. Again, this is parochialism. This is a problem, that just narrow outlook. So it's not that you shouldn't read Ghazali, you shouldn't read this, but you also have to read Ibn Rushd, who was there, and I was mentioning earlier, there is a Swedish economist, Odd Langholm, who wrote a book about the scholastic economics and mentions Ibn Rushd as the discoverer of the law of demand. I mean, where are we? And, we say, Ibn Khaldun is the father of economics. If there's a Muslim father for economics, it's Ibn Rushd. It's not Ibn Khaldun. Ibn Rushd was 200 years earlier than Ibn Khaldun. Again, we appreciate their work, no question. But it takes a Westerner to come and say the ideas that Laffer curve presented was in Ibn Khaldun's work. No Muslim ever did that. So, you can praise him. Please do, but don't stop there. You need to go further. And you also need to open the venue to more of universalism and transcend exclusivism and parochialism. The Quran is universal. The Prophet ﷺ is universal. His message is universal. And so we have to be able to transcend all of this tribalism for our practical purposes. This mazhab versus that mazhab, that we have to say, what do you have to say? Imam Ali has a very wonderful saying. He says, don't look at who is saying something, look at what they're saying. And so, you reject Ibn Rushd because Ghazali didn't like it. And, it's stuck. So we are stuck in the past. So, but why didn't he like him? Well, because he was Ash'ari and he didn't like the thoughts of Ibn Rushd, who was basically finding a much stronger case for science and religion closeness than Ghazali himself. But then again, this is our parochialism. This is our problem, because somebody else tells us that Ghazali didn't like Ibn Rushd, so I'm not going to read Ibn Rushd. And on and on. We don't ask questions. We don't say, well, why did Juwayni came up with these ideas of Maqasid Sharia? Because the paucity of my own critical thinking forces me to go and grab things 1,000 years ago, which was good for that time. But then it changes, society changes. We need to bring ourselves up to date with what the Quran has to say and what we face in today's society.
Thank you, Professor, for that. I'm conscious of the time, so I'll request Dr. Eskandar to introduce Professor Belal, and then we may start the session.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saad, and also thank you so much, Prof Abbas. Reminds me all the good days of INCEIF, listening to all your lectures and, so yeah, inshallah, the young people will carry on, finding more answers to your questions.
Inshallah.
I wanted to read Professor Belal short bio, but then in the interest of time, again, Professor Belal also need no introductions. When he first joined INCEIF 5 years ago, the first person to come and say me, we need to revolutionize Islamic finance, not just by doing empirical work, but really mathematicize Islamic finance and try to prove theoretically and also empirically, where exactly that we are heading with this, especially with, instruments that we are looking at. So Professor Abbas' sessions really laid the foundations, giving out the broader framework. And one of the biggest idea or biggest thought that I can take from Professor Abbas is that how do we really push for innovative instruments, not just following the previous work, but in terms of following the Islamic principle or resharing principle. I think that will be the essence of probably Belal presentation today. So there's a connecting point for you guys. So there's a framework, and now you can see the mathematics of it. So Prof Belal, over to you, inshallah.
Thank you, Eskandar.
15 to 35 minutes, please go ahead, inshallah.
All right, so I'll share my screen, and I'm going to take it from there. Okay. Sorry, I have to look for my... Yeah. Am I sharing the screen?
Not yet, Prof.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet, Prof. Not yet.
Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm just a bit lost now. Just give me a second. I have to go somewhere. Sorry, just give me a second.
I think you are co-host, Prof. I think you can share your screen.
Wait, I can't find my paper.
Is it the paper that you contributed?
Yes, but it has been updated, so I'm sorry about this. I don't know where it's gone. Excuse me, guys. This is really annoying.
Your PowerPoint.
So I open the PowerPoint, and what do I do then? Then I go to Zoom and share.
Yeah, share screen. You need to share screen.
Okay.
Then look for your document. Yeah.
Share screen.
Yes.
And then look for my document.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
This is it, right?
It's coming, yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
You need to close the one on the left.
Sorry. Okay, I don't know how to do this. Close everything, sorry. I've used it many times, but somehow something is going wrong now. I've used it many times.
Okay, Prof, take your time.
Okay.
You'll be fine, don't worry, inshallah.
Share screen.
Mm-hmm.
Then, yeah, I think I have it.
Yes, it's clear. Okay.
Okay, I have it. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let me just make this small. I'm going to talk. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Prof Abbas, Prof Saad, Prof Eskandar, colleagues, dear friends, students. I'm following Prof Abbas, and it's a difficult act to follow, so I'm going to do my bit. Prof Abbas mentioned sukuk. I'm glad he did that because we all know that the sukuk as being practiced today, most of us feel that it is not really Sharia compliant. It's not really what the Quran requires. So what do we do about it? So before I go on, let me tell you what a sukuk is. And then, I will ask you to be a bit patient. You know why? Because in this talk, I will actually propose some solutions to this outstanding problem of the sukuk. How do you do profit and risk sharing? I'll propose 2 solutions. Not that these are accepted by the community, but these are examples of how a solution would look like. And so you have to be a bit patient, because I thought of this a bit and I thought of how to present it. I can do a very qualitative presentation, but that was just reduced to talk, okay? So I want to show you, especially students, there's some really hardcore mathematics which is required to be mastered if you want to do proper Islamic finance. It is not just talking or maqasid or the Sharia framework. Those are simply foundations. And what Prof Abbas pointed out, once the foundation is laid, finance is a set of cash flows. And cash flow means quantitative, and quantitative means you have to have a mathematical equation which generates the cash flows for you. So how do you do that? Well, I'll demonstrate that to you. And so please be patient, because what I'll do is that I'll first show the derivation to you and then give you solid empirical evidence that this model is working. There's no point me giving you an equation and saying, well, I wish it worked, and then I go home. Solid empirical evidence, it works. So that's where the whole focus of my presentation is. So here we are. What is a sukuk? A sukuk is a coupon bond. Unfortunately, I use the word coupon bond because that's conventionally what is used. It's an instrument which pays cash flows at predetermined time intervals in the future. So it's future time. There's not present time. So the T1, the bond is issued, the sukuk is issued at T0. It pays a certain amount of return, I would say, not coupon, coupon if you like, at T1, T2, Tn, and it matures the T capital. Capital T is subscript of N. Okay, so here is the instrument, and you have cash flows at these big solid dots. So here's my sukuk. It issued at time T0, matures at time Tn, and has certain cash flows at these pre-specified times in the future. Sukuk has a face value, it's called L. I'll propose two mathematical models for you. And just be patient, I'll go through them slowly, but I'll contextualize the instrument a bit. You can have a sukuk with continuous coupons as well. And I introduced this intentionally because many of you have never seen this picture in finance. This future time, which I showed you a few seconds ago, here's calendar time. So what does it mean? It means in future time, 180 days from today, I'm going to receive a payment. But this future is not today. Where is it? It's along this axis. So when calendar time meets future time, that's when the payments are made. First payment, second payment, third payment, and so on and so forth. This is a diagram that I strongly recommend you master, because without this diagram, you can't conceptualize the cash flows in the future. This future time is entirely in the human mind. It doesn't exist in nature. The whole issue of risk and profit sharing, as Prof Abbas showed, is that the coupons that are paid at these prefixed times have to be stochastic. I use the word stochastic many times because that's conventionally used in finance. Stochastic simply means uncertain, random, okay? That's just a technical term for it. Now, the coupon should increase or decrease based on the performance of the issuer. That's the fundamental point in Islamic finance, is the issuer is there. The risk is that the issuer may do badly, okay? So then you should get less. But if the issuer does well, you should get more. So how do you incorporate this idea of risk into the coupons? That's the issue, into the payments being made by the sukuk. Now, I will discuss an index-linked sukuk later. An index-linked sukuk is a bit different from a GDP or inflation-linked bond, because unlike a GDP, which is a macroeconomic indicator, sukuk refers to a particular firm. A specific firm issues a debt instrument, sukuk, and pays in Islamic finance based on his profit and loss. Okay, so that's the issue of. So to show you what the sukuk market is, this is sukuk market. 82% of the sukuk we issued here, fine print, sorry for that, is either called fixed vanilla, fixed coupon bond. These are all fixed coupon bond sukuk. And the rest of them are also fixed coupon bond, okay, fixed discount. I show this data to you to show you that of the $301 billion US sukuk issued during this interval, 90% And here the country is issuing them. Malaysia is a big player. So is Indonesia. But look at these. These are the fixed plain vanilla. They are the largest number of sukuks. Here's another fixed discount. Fixed. Okay, please note that. So in 2021 alone, $188 billion worth of sukuk was issued. From sukuk data, we see $300 billion sukuk. 90% of them have fixed coupons that are paid at predetermined dates. Return of sukuk principal is also guaranteed, as Prof Abbas mentioned in passing also. Governments are issuing so-called sukuk and they're guaranteeing the return of the principal. Now, fixed coupons and return of principal is not consistent with the principle of profit and risk sharing. Sukuk with this cash flow, fixed coupons and returning the principal, is equivalent, and you can do a simple no arbitrage argument to show it's equivalent to a fixed coupon bond. By the way, fixed coupon bonds in the world today are worth $200 trillion, not billion, trillion. So the Islamic sukuks are trivial, tiny 1%, but even that 1% is being swallowed up by the mainstream conventional finance, which is fixed coupon bonds. Okay, so $200 trillion and probably hitting now $250 trillion are already issued. So sukuk with fixed coupon, in fact, defines a fixed interest rate instrument that we all know is not Sharia compliant. So all this is known to the practitioners. So when I say this, people say, okay, so big deal, so what? We know all this. All of us know this, but we are quite happy about it. Okay, there's a study done of the Gulf states by one of the organizations, and you can look at the website. 85% are not Sharia compliant. So what's going on? Okay, so this is what's going on. The sukuk has this another really, in my view, glaring shortcoming of gharar. Gharar is an Arabic term for opaqueness or lack of clarity. Sukuk should be asset-backed, but in most cases asset-based. There's linked to the issue of risk transfer, risk sharing, and risk shifting. Okay, this risk shifting comes into asset-based. But this fact is not made clear when the sukuk is issued. You don't know what is the real underlying security for the sukuk. Another source of gharar, which I really find amazing that this is being accepted by the practitioners, is this flow chart. Now, I can challenge anyone who's listening in now, if they can figure out what is this instrument all about. It's virtually impossible to deduce what's going on. This is an ordinary fixed coupon bond giving 4.5% fixed coupon every year. But what they've done with all of this circuitry and transaction, they've converted a sukuk holder into a Sharia compliant murabaha, which means, trading investor here. Okay, finally, all of this circulation finally ends up here. And so, yeah, behold, we did alchemy, Islamic style. We converted a fixed coupon bond into a Sharia compliant instrument. There's total gharar because no one in their normal sphere of knowledge can deduce what's going on here. So both fixed coupons, returning principal, lack of clarity. These are three issues I have with sukuk, and many of us have this issue. Now, in our view, and I'm leaving aside the fact that many issuers and investors think that fixed coupon sukuk is Sharia compliant. They're completely happy with it because the Sharia board approved it. And as Prof Abbas pointed out, the issuers, central banks, I talked to many of the CEOs of Islamic banks. They said, look, we're perfectly happy with this fixed coupon bond arrangement. We're perfectly happy because we are happy, the issuers are happy, investors are happy. Why do you want to rock the boat? So my response was that, fine, then why just call yourself conventional finance? Why do you say you're Islamic finance? So that's the branding that Prof Abbas pointed out, and that spread of 150 basis points is above the market. It's not below the market. It should have been below the market if it's genuine. It's above the market for the same instrument because they branded themselves. So what my view now is that one of the big obstacles to having a sukuk, which is basically fundamentally consistent with our Islamic principles of no interest rate, is that we need mathematical models which give you the cash flows reflecting the profit and loss of the issuer. And these have not been, to my knowledge, adequately developed. So I will give you two models. Please be a bit patient. I'll give you the equation, but I'll also give you empirical data from the market to show you how these instruments are working out, if they are actually accurate or not. So now you have to do some mathematics. I'm sorry about that. If you're doing finance, you should be okay with that. Here is the conventional coupon bond. Okay, so those of you who haven't seen this, a summation simply means the first term plus second term plus third term plus fourth term. The reason it's written like this is, suppose n is 10,000, you can't possibly write this out in your longhand. You know, I can make n 1 million also. So you have to adopt some mathematical notation to represent the instrument first. First lesson, especially for students, please don't think by memorizing some English text and Arabic laws, you have learned Islamic finance. No, that's the framework. That's the context in which instruments are going to be defined. All instruments are cash flows and nothing else. Cash flow means quantitative and precise mathematical expressions. So here's one expression. This is a conventional coupon bond. What this is saying is that for the principal L, I have some interest rate being paid, CN. You can take CN to be constant if you like. I just wrote in generality. And this is a discounting of the future cash flow. So if you get some money, say, 1 month from today, then you want its value today, you'll discount it to the present day. So the discounting is done in the language of conventional finance by the US Treasury risk-free zero coupon bonds. Okay, the zero coupon bonds are the instrument for discounting risk-free cash flows. So here is the coupon bond, is a portfolio of risk-free cash flows, each of them paying you L times CN. Yeah, this is the starting of our analysis of a sukuk. I'll tell you why in a minute. So what's a sukuk? This is a sukuk. Okay, why is this sukuk? So sukuk also Sharia allows debt instruments at paying at prefixed times and to be a finite duration. So the instrument can be launched at a certain time and can mature after finite time. That's allowed. So we are in good shape. The little thing I showed you here, this is allowed by the debt instrument in Islamic finance. So within this framework, now we must study what is a sukuk. So here's a sukuk for you. The cash flow alpha cannot be predetermined. It has to be uncertain and stochastic, depending on the performance of the issuer. This is the point that Prof Abbas repeatedly made. It has to share the risk with the issuer. And here is the risky discounting of this cash flow, because you're not sure you'll get this or how much you'll get. You can see something very interesting here, which Prof Abbas pointed out, and he's made this point many times, but many of our colleagues could not understand. Many of our colleagues said, profit and loss is there. Why do you talk about risk sharing? It's staring you in the face. This is risk. And this is profit and loss. They're clearly differentiated. They're not the same thing. Future cash flows inherently have risk. And what you're getting there is based on profit and loss. So the sukuk, in a very beautiful way, exemplifies this principle of risk sharing and profit sharing. Now, this is stochastic. You can't prefix it. So what do? This is the whole challenge that I want to address. You need a mathematical expression for alpha. You can't guesswork and say, oh, I'll give you 2%. Why 2%? Why not 2.5%? Why not 3.1%? How do you fix this? And how is it linked to the performance of the issuer? You have to decide that. So alpha is not fixed return, instead depends on performance of the issuer. The discounting is done by risky zero coupon bond, not US Treasury risk-free bonds. As I mentioned, alpha and R are beautiful exemplification of profit and risk. They come together in this instrument.
Beautiful.
So I will do two instruments, okay? Two distinct instruments. The first one relatively simple, the second one much more complicated. So I'll just warm up to that. So here I have the first instrument. So here is the take on profit sharing. Suppose I deal with Petronas. Okay, Petronas has its annual statements, but I think, well, Petronas has many issues with writing off bad loans and with amortizing this and that liability they have. But I know that Petronas's primary product is oil, drilling of, prospecting of oil and selling oil. So a proxy for the profit and loss of Petronas is an international index for oil. like Brent crude oil prices. So the return on the principal alpha can be fixed depending on the price of Brent crude. Since the oil index varies with the market condition, its value is uncertain, and hence yield stochastic coupons, whose value is based on an indirect proxy of the issuer's profit and loss. So I don't have profit and loss. There's a first approximation to show you what a full-fledged sukuk would look like. So profit and loss here to me is encoded in the revenue from oil, which is quite logical. Suppose revenue of Petronas 90% oil. I'm pretty close then. So, I've given you the references here because all of this talk is based on papers I've written, so you can study them in great detail if you choose to. So here is the payoff. Payoff means, how do I decide what's the coupon? So let me tell you what you need. Okay, this is, let me not go through this and show you the picture here. What you need is that the payoff is how much you'll get for your coupon. Here is the index, say Brent crude. Now you like, if the Brent crude goes up, if the price goes up of crude oil, you should get higher coupon. Now I put a cap here and a ceiling and a floor, but I noticed if you have full Islamic finance, there's no floor, there's no ceiling. Okay, so but it's best to start with a floor and ceiling. Then you can take K1 and K2 to the limits of no floor and ceiling. This tells you how much coupon you'll get. If suppose the market crashes, you tell the investor, look, if market crashes, I'll give you 3%. If the market booms like it's booming now for reasons that are not linked to the market, then the issuer will say, look, I'll give you a maximum return. This goes up and up, I'll cut it off here. So suppose normally you would have a range from say 5% to 9%. Most investors will be quite happy. This is the expression for the payoff function. So the payoff function says, if the Brent crude is less than K1, I hit my floor. If Brent crude is within the range, which is the normal market range, then your coupons go up with some index. And if your Brent crude goes above the ceiling, you get a maximum coupon. Okay, so here's the coupon. And then I took the case of Petronas. It issued a bond in 2009, 5.25%, a $1 billion sukuk with 13 semi-annual payments. So here is the choices I've made, and these are made based on various considerations, which these are examples for you, so don't worry about them. I took a lower limit, upper limit, and based on the volatility of the oil, I had these two ceiling and floor coupon. Here's the price of oil. And then you notice something very interesting. This coupon rises as the price of oil rises. Then as the price of oil overshoots K2, the coupons are held constant. There's a maximum coupon that the issuer promised. And then as the oil price falls, the coupon falls. And it hits the floor. So this is a mathematical realization of profit sharing, because you have basically an index for the profitability of the issuer, and you have a coupon based on that. Now, something else is here very interesting for the issuer. Petronas has a hedge cash flow. If you subtract that, you see, when you do this instrument, you have to ring fence a certain number of barrels of oil required for paying the coupons. So your investor is assured of the fact that these barrels of oil, he has ownership over them, which is a tangible asset giving him the returns, which is another criteria of Islamic finance. A tangible asset must give you the returns. So if you subtract the income from oil, the coupons you're paying, so here's the oil price minus coupon, you realize that in the beginning, his oil is just covering the coupons. Net is zero for the issuer. Then as the oil price rises, the income of the issuer is rising above the promise he made for paying the coupons. And when the oil price falls, of course, then, one coupon he's out of pocket because it's fallen below his income from the oil and goes up again. So this instrument provides a natural hedge to the issuer as well, and also gives a assured tangible commodity, namely the barrels of oil from which he is deriving his return on his investment. Now you can do a future flow. All the futures have been ruined by Ukraine and the fact the oil price spiked. But this is notional, okay? Just to show you, if you were say an investor and you're looking at a 10-year horizon, you do your homework. You say, okay, World Bank has this prediction. Should I buy the coupon of Petronas? And the answer is a resounding yes, because today the oil price is down, but it's supposed to rise. So I buy the coupon, and here I am the investor. I took the risk. This may be wrong, right? And here my coupon is rising, and finally I hit my ceiling. So the perfect form of profit sharing and risk sharing. I'm doing both. If I look at the side of the issuer, right? This is the investor. He's getting a good return because the price of oil went up, right? The investor is okay. He's covered by barrels of oil. It fluctuates a bit, but he's still ahead. He's naturally hedged. Price of oil falls, he's okay because he's pegged his coupon to this price. So this has many different aspects. This is a mathematical instrument. You can, when you hedge, you must differentiate on K1, you must differentiate on PU, PL, all that. All that you can do because you have a mathematical expression for the sukuk. You can't do this by guesswork, okay? You have to hedge your position always. Otherwise, you'll be out of pocket when the market moves. Okay, so here we have this. I'm leaving for the experts, okay? I just want to point out that what I gave you is the payoff at the time when it matures. Like I gave you the payoff at the times T1, T2, T3, T4. You can ask me, look, I still have, semi-annual, I still have 3 months to the payment of my next coupon. What's the price of the sukuk? Then you must take this payoff function and you must discount it to the present day. This is the foundation of option theory. There's a basically, if you look at this, those who know option theory, there is a bull spread. You're long, you're short on a call option K1, and you're long on a call option K2. This is a bull spread, which is well known in option theory. So you do the expectation value. You have to have a model for the Brent crude. So you have the present day price of the sukuk. This T is today. Remember, this thing matures sometimes in the future at capital N. So here is your full expression. This was worked out by me in my paper. You have to show a number of things. You have to show it's free from arbitrage. You have to show it has martingale property, various other properties it has to be basically consistent with the fact that you can't arbitrage against the price. If you misprice an object, an instrument, you will be arbitraged against. And of course, then you'll lose money because it's mispriced. So you have to check all that with this instrument. You just can't define an instrument, walk away. You must make sure it's free from arbitrage. Now, in this case, I'm still discounting this by risk-free zero coupon bond because I don't know what this risk of the issuer is. I'm just looking at the index. So you can say, well, now, I'm not happy with this. I want to find out what's the risky zero coupon bond of the issuer. Okay, then you have to do more work, right? You want to have more information. You have to make more effort. So there's a second model I have for you all, more complicated. So now I don't take the index to be the proxy for the performance of the issuer. The reason being the index doesn't refer to Petronas, it refers to every single producer of oil in the world. So I need a proxy for the, you notice I'm staying away from profit and loss because there are many issues of profit and loss, primarily profit and loss, the declarations controlled by the management and the directors of the company who may basically bend the law to show less profit than has been made and things like that. Of course, if you had a perfectly ethical society, that wouldn't happen. But taking into account what we have, profit and loss also, is normally declared every semi-annually, annually. So there's a lot of issues with the accounting there. Best thing, in my view, is to go for some transparent and publicly available information. In this case, I said, look, let's go to the valuation of the company, which is publicly declared every quarter. But if you go to Reuters, Thomson, Bloomberg, valuation is given every day. Daily data is available for valuation. So then the issue is that we will base the coupons, the sukuk coupon on the valuation of the company, which is quite reasonable. If the valuation goes up, clearly he should pay me more. Valuation goes down, clearly he should pay less. But you need an equation for that. You just can't say yes, more and less. How much more? How much less? And then you have to hedge this instrument. You need a mathematical expression. So it turns out, and I showed this in the beginning, continuous coupons can be modeled. In fact, surprisingly, continuous coupon are simpler to analyze than discrete coupons. Initially, you may not think that because you may not like this expression integration, but you know, calculus to me is a language that every student finance must know as much as his own mother tongue, okay? Without calculus, you're not doing finance, you're doing guesswork. And so you can pack your bags and go home. You can never compete with the world of finance if you don't know mathematics. Here the sukuk is paying continuously. So the summation I have, I replace this by integration, that's all. This should not put you off. This is the return, the coupon, sukuk. This is the risky discounting, and I'm integrating over all the coupons which are paid continuously. That's all. And this tau is simply the remaining time to maturity of the sukuk. Okay, so I don't want to trivialize this, but this is a standard expression which follows from the definition of a sukuk. A further improvement, as I said, which I don't support, is if you can replace valuation directly by a model for the profit and loss of the issuing firm. I don't support that because I don't trust the accounting systems in the world today. But you know, that's a very difficult problem because to model a profit and loss of an issuing firm, you need to know everything about the issuing firm. And you know, I'd rather stay away from that. Now, why did I put this equation here? I put this equation here for the students. This is a typical partial differential equation you must solve. Another lesson I want you to derive from this is not your econometric model. This is not your trivial white noise. All that doesn't work. Those are very simple models. All of econometrics is based on white noise, which is a tiny, tiny sliver of mathematics. And I discovered finance only knows stochastic calculus. Even that, most students of finance don't even know stochastic calculus, sadly enough. So please open your mind. If you're going to do finance, you have to master some serious mathematics. I wrote this down to show you, to find the value of the sukuk, one has to solve this differential equation with this boundary condition. Where did it all come from is in my paper. If you want, you can solve explicitly. Here's solutions here. This is the value of the sukuk. The sukuk is not some trivial arithmetic sum of little simple expression. It's a highly complicated expression here. Look at this expression. P is exponential. P itself is a bunch of exponentials. This is normal, a bunch of exponentials. This exponential exponential. All this crazy formula is giving you the price of a risk sharing and profit sharing sukuk. That's how complex the instrument is. So the coupons you're paying are stochastic. The time of coupon to pay is Tn. Remember, you can pay continuously, but I wrote this for simplicity. Then this is the coupon. It's stochastic because the value of the firm in the future is not known. You only know it when it occurs. So uncertain returns. And this expression that I just wrote down to let you know, this is not some trivial expression. So you may say, well, Prof, you wrote this, who cares? You know, it's just you're dreaming. A pie in the sky, it means nothing. Okay, let's check it out. Let's see if it fits data. Okay. So where do we go? There's no sukuks which are profit sharing. But you'll be surprised, and Prof Abbas will be happy to know that the market knows about risk sharing. You know how the price into the price of the bond reflects risk sharing. The bond is traded every day, and the risk is known by the pricing of the bond. And this will come out here. So there are many ways to price a bond. I mean, the normal view of finance is that you discount future cash flows of the issuer. In my view, no. There's a different way of doing it, which the equation I gave you, in my view, is the basis of pricing a risky bond. So here's the empirical test. Here's the empirical test. So let's take a bond from the market, risky corporate fixed coupon bond, to see if the bond price is near to the formula we have of a sukuk. So the US corporate bonds, $9 trillion in 2017, is probably gone to 15 trillion. I start with a Johnson & Johnson $700 million coupon bond with semi-annual coupons of half of this, annual coupons of 1.125%. According to Merton, not Miron, sorry, Merton, risky coupon bonds pricing is actually an option on the valuation of the company. That's how you find the price. So here we did a study, myself and Dr. Karim, who was those days my PhD student. We did the pricing of 42 bonds on the New York Stock Exchange to see, does this formula work? And here's a rather, in our view, amazing result. There's only one parameter in the pricing here, omega. Everything else is fixed by the market. V is fixed by the market. The spot rate is fixed by the market. There's actually the forward interest rate. So you have to read this from the market. So I plot this to show you, this is the par value of the bond. This is the valuation of the company. It's going crazy, right? And here is the price of the bond. So if I take the valuation of the company, I put it into my formula, I get almost exact fit.
Wow.
Over 90% accuracy. There is
Wow.
no accident. I'll do it for many cases. We did it for 42 cases. There is
Wow.
not an accident. You put this into this machine that I've given you. This machine, you put this stuff into the machine and bang, this comes out. Something also interesting comes out. I'm paying coupons continuously. These are semi-annual. So I say, look, let me average this and see how I compare with the price that the coupon that Johnson & Johnson is offering. We find the average of the fluctuating semi-annual coupon is 0.052, very close to the value of the issued fixed coupon bond. So if I look at this, I realize that from the point of view of Sukuk, it's very close. The risk sharing is known by the market. This bond is slightly underpriced because he's paying 10% above what you would expect for a accurately priced bond. Okay. So now I do a public bank. This guy went crazy in the end. I don't know what happened July 16, but you see again, almost exact fit, except here it fails. And it fails is fine, right? Because these exogenous shocks cannot be priced into the model. Bond is highly overpriced because he's giving 4.2%. He should be giving 5.3%. So in Malaysia, they're having a good time, public bank. He's really, really underpaying his investors for the risk they're taking in buying his bond. He should be paying 5.3%. Apple long duration bond, 10-year bond. Again, you see, I gave the ones which are not perfect fits to show you, although R square 76%, the fit is remarkably good. This value of Apple went crazy, this is the valuation, but the equation captures that, brings it down, doesn't make it equal. Here again, the valuation fell. So here again, here's the red is the model, black is the market. The model is following the market. And then the coupon shows you that underpriced because he's paying 2.45% annually. From this stochastic model, he should be paying 2.2%. So it's from our view, it's underpriced. Google, again, shockingly accurate. Here's Google went crazy, absolutely, but the equation captured it. Google is paying 1.998%, but the stochastic model says 1.94%, very close. So coming back to the issue of Sukuk, the Sukuk can be easily priced using this mathematical framework. You can easily capture the performance of the issuer. The only point now is, as Prof Abbas pointed out, people have become so conveniently fixed in their way of doing business and making profit. They're not interested in anything beyond their own self-interest. That's what I see driving all of them, okay? And I don't want to take any names. I don't want to get in trouble. So the main objective of our journal is to encourage and support groundbreaking research and address all the shortcomings of Islamic finance, which is a fantastic subject, which is unfortunately being handled by people who have not the principles, but their self-interest in mind. That is my really reading of Islamic finance over the last few years. The journal to provide mathematical Islamic finance and economics. I mean, that's my whole focus on this subject. I want a mathematical foundation so that we can create models and test them. Note these models are not econometric models in case those who know econometrics are feeling comfortable. Nothing to do with econometrics. This is in fact mathematical tools, including what I call quantum mathematics, Hilbert space, Lagrangian, Hamiltonian, path integrals, very complicated mathematics. which is behind these models. You know why? Because these models require the flexibility and the variety that these instruments carry with them. So the mathematics has to be equally complicated. Two candidates, I say candidate for Sukuk because, you know, as Prof Abbas pointed out, unless you have the stamp of authority, it's not Sharia compliant. So, you know, that's unfortunate. The Sharia board has to agree. And I'm not addressing to the Sharia board, but these are candidates for Sukuk, which I believe should be approved by the Sharia board. They're consistent with the risk taking, risk sharing, and profit sharing principles. And I showed them to illustrate mathematical models that reflect this profit and risk sharing principle of Islamic finance. And these models go beyond interest-based fixed coupon bonds of conventional finance. Fixed coupon bonds are absolutely the backbone of the dominance of conventional finance over the entire world. I just mentioned over 200 trillion US dollars of bonds have been issued. And that is where the entire, in my view, focus of Islamic finance should be. It should be to take on the major challenges. It should not be to escape into, say, you know, Islamic social finance, which is fine. I have no issues with that. Be it waqf or be it, you know, zakat and sharia based, you know, charity is excellent. But the main heart of finance is here, mobilizing capital, instruments that mobilize capital, and instruments in the capital markets, which are based on the principles of Islamic finance. Thank you. I think I'm within my time limit.
Thank you so much, Prof Belal. You know, it reminds me of the days, you know, you were trying to present these ideas to some of the policymakers in Malaysia. You know, everyone accept the fact that, you know, idea is brilliant, but then it's always trying to push it to the market. People seems to be quite skeptical. So that's why Prof Belal agreed that, you know, we need to change the mindset of younger generation. When these people become the leaders, inshallah, one day policymakers and everything, they can get out of the comfort zone and try to do something new. And you don't have to worry about the mathematical of it, because, you know, some of the scholars like Prof Belal and everything have created the pathway. We just have to work on it and maybe inshallah improve it. I think that's the spirit of this journal. Try to do groundbreaking.
Eskandar, just can I respond to it? I saw a question flash in front of me. It can be used AI and data mining and machine learning. Clearly, you know, data mining, machine learning, deep, mathematics is absolutely essential. Okay, AI. You know, I just completed a book, Quantum Computers, to use quantum computing to do option pricing and to do pattern recognition in vast quantities of empirical financial data. So if you have a portfolio of, say, 10,000 instruments, there's no way you can optimize this using even a supercomputer. So,
Prof Belal, can you repeat? Because I think you
see, there's a question which is placed. Yeah, the last question, so I couldn't help but respond because it's to do with mathematics. So it says that can we use AI and machine learning and deep learning to do finance and Islamic finance? And the answer is a capital YES. Because, you know, as Prof Abbas pointed out, unless we are at the frontier of knowledge, innovating and creating, if you're talking about 1,000 years ago, you might as well go and live in the caves, you know, it's over. That won't let you do anything. That's great to have the knowledge and continuity of the past. That's why we read the Holy Quran, right? That's all linked to the past. And it's living in our mind. It's not gone. But today is today. We have to innovate, we have to create, and we have to be independent of, in my view, Wall Street. Otherwise, you'll be gobbled up by them. Sorry, maybe I should wait for the questions here.
No problem, bro. I don't want to contain your energy. So that's, you know, that's the spirit of, I mean, that's really shows that, you know, if the current generation are so still very passionate about Islamic finance, I think people at my age and even younger than us should have more, you know, energy and passion towards pursuing this cause towards promoting Islamic finance as well. Thank you so much, Prof Belal. So now it's time.
Pleasure.
Probably questions. Anyone else would like to? We have time for one more question, I would say. Okay, Prof Abbas, I give the honor to you. So please go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you very much. First of all, it's beautiful. Only your beautiful mind, Prof, could come up with such elegant, but at the same time, simple way of presenting risk sharing in a sukuk environment. But I just had one question. You remember you had the upper and lower bounds.
Yes.
I'm wondering if you were to expand the time span, say go to 1979, where there was a huge price jump, and then come forward to today, you'll end up with negative prices actually in real terms. I said, take it not in nominal terms as it is in this picture, but take it in real terms and expand it to then you'll end up with seriously lower bounds that in a real risk sharing Islamic finance would actually be permissible.
Negative.
Yes, but
Yes.
that's the nature of risk sharing.
Yes. So Prof, if you remove the lower bound, you can go negative. So that's also logical, right? The investor should pay something to the issuer if the issuer is sinking.
That's good. That would be the real thing. And the point that I was trying to make is that if you actually did this empirical work, which shouldn't take very long.
From 71 or 79?
From
71.
79, as you remember, this was a huge jump in oil prices.
Yes.
But then in the 80s, it dropped to $5 a barrel.
Yes.
In that, in real terms, it was just not only free. In other words, you paid people to buy your oil.
Right.
So, that effectively puts an empirical lower limit.
Yes.
And you can work that up to
Prof, would you agree that we should remove the lower and upper limit for full risk sharing?
That's right.
Okay.
You need to, but I mean, you can actually let the empirical data set the limit.
Sure. Okay. Okay. I like that.
Any format that you work out for a sukuk, you just remove the upper and lower and let the natural, of course, because you have a history in this case.
Well, I like that. You know why? One can show the investor here is the empirical data, what is lower, what is upper, and we put that into the instrument.
That's right.
Okay. That sounds good.
And then a lot of markets, Islamic markets, that would, especially in commodity prices and commodity producers, like not only if one could approach them with actually work up gold prices worldwide and have a long span of data, Uzbekistan should be a buyer and seller of this sukuk. In other words, should be marketing it internationally. And I think if someone approached them with this and explained to them, they could issue this sukuk rather than going for sukuk, which is normally not Islamic.
So, Prof, what you're saying is actually very interesting, that it provides a natural hedge to both the issuer and the investor, which is the whole risk aspect people not realizing, you see.
And that's sharing. See, Pakistan, for example, could do that with rice very easily. As a commodity. That if Dr. Saad, for example, would work this up for the rice market and have the central bank or even the treasury, they can inshallah, for example, issue sukuks, and this sukuk can, right now you have this huge discount rate on
Prof, you're freezing.
Prof, lost you.
Yeah, we lost him. His account is freezing. We have a number of questions in the chat room. Are these anything that any interesting questions that we want to take up, Brother Rahimi?
We have from Mohamed, from Prophet Muhammad time period, the business based on share system, but now today Muslims are much backward in their field as compared to the West. So maybe someone can respond to this.
I didn't understand the question. Can you repeat that?
I think he's asking maybe the question. You can speak, Muhammad Amir. We can ask over the microphone.
You can unblock him.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi. Hello.
Assalamualaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Sir, I'm asking that at the time of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, there is the business is based on share system. They are using a share. But now today, as you know, the share market is so much high and they are much mathematical based term. But we are much behind as a being Muslim, and Muslim countries are much behind than the American and European countries. But why?
I don't know why. Prof Saad, you have the answer to that.
The capital markets are less developed. So maybe, Professor, you want to talk about why are capital markets not as developed in some of the Muslim countries? Do you want to?
You know, I can speak, for Bangladesh because I'm more familiar with that. The issue there is liquidity. A few big players control the market. And so they are the ones who can essentially create price jumps and price collapse. Unless there's liquidity, there's no such thing as pricing. An illiquid market is completely manipulated. So you have to have a liquid market, the precondition to have instruments which are mathematically based. Same to option pricing, right? If the options are not traded, they have virtually no real price. So why isn't there liquidity? Because, you don't have industrial capital. And also, I'm a bit afraid of finance capital, because if finance capital gets the upper hand, that's the end. Then, they make money out of money. It's totally disconnect from the actual economy, which goes against Islamic finance also.
Sir, I think most of the Muslim countries they are developing country, and the most business person and the companies is not focused on the sharing based system as the time of Prophet Muhammad. The Sahaba is just going in the form of karwas, and they are just share the money for the sharing the goods for the business and trading. But we are not using such type of the tools now today, and we are not focused on that system. What is the cause behind?
This has to be answered by Prof Eskandar or Prof Saad.
The economic, I'll give it a shot. The economic development in, let's say, the South Asian region, historically, if you look at the legacy of, if you look at the history of Muslims, and I've done some work on Muslim Spain. In fact, my first paper was published on Muslim Spain. So there we saw very well-developed financial markets. And we also saw that financial markets are very transparent, and financial markets where the flow of capital was very smooth. And hence, over time, there was a clear cut. One can see that over time, there was let's say, a deviation from this free flow of capital or transparency of the market, or what is referred to as gharar. Many forms of exploitation entered the Muslim world. Now, Professor mentioned one of the reasons. One of the reasons is clearly exploitation, where big capital tends to exploit, or a certain form of institutional development did not happen in the way. But there is, interestingly, you'll find that before the 15th century, the development was much different than compared to after the 15th century. So it clearly has to do with the application of the rules, which I think Islamic finance advocates at the very core. So that is, I'm not an economic historian, but my earlier work on Muslim Spain and then some recent work on the South Asian regions does support the conclusion that markets are less efficient, clearly. And now it's an empirical phenomena that markets in our parts of the world may be less efficient, and they need to become more efficient and following certain processes of gharar, riba, they can be instrumental in creating a better form of market dynamics. and an ethical and regulatory framework as well. And this is important. This is where I think Professor Belal's work is interesting. So his thoughts on economics, and maybe he can share some of that, that the regulatory and ethical principles of pre-15th century, for example, if you read people like Greber or other anthropologists who have looked into earlier civilizations and how they have developed, clearly in some of their work, a great emphasis is also put on the ethical aspects of the communities. So, and that is something that, so a good regulatory ethical perspective is also essential in developing a good, strong economy. Maybe, Professor, you want to talk about the role of the regulatory frameworks?
Yeah, so thank you. You know, I mean, initially I'd intended to talk about economics, Islamic economics, but, you know, I had no time. So what people don't realize is that when you have a private firm and you have the market, these are the microeconomy. A microeconomy means a man or entrepreneur or group of entrepreneur who run a firm, have some employees, and they want to generate profit for their own company. So they enter the market as a small entity. The market and private capitals themselves are allowed to function only because of the legal framework and of the regulatory framework, which is controlling the market and private capital. So Prof Abbas mentioned this in passing. When you had the crisis in 2008 in the US, and then they transferred 4.2 trillion US dollars of the taxpayers' money to private enterprises from 2008 to 2014. Why? Because the macroeconomy was controlled by the holders of capital. So in contrast, you know, there's a crackdown on capital in China in 2020, and they actually evaporated, means it destroyed $1.5 trillion of market cap of Chinese companies because they accused them of abusing the market. So the issue here is that big, you know, conglomerates, big tech firms, they can grow only big because the laws require certain compliance. In the case of the US, they can go as big as they want and abuse the market. I assume in China, it doesn't. I quote China because it's the only example we have where trillion-dollar companies or billion-dollar companies are being regulated. Otherwise, they, you know, say Apple market cap is $1 trillion. No one's regulating Apple. They can do whatever they want. So the macroeconomy is a place where the actual regulatory and the legal framework comes in. Because remember, in the US, for example, ownership of property is based on the legal framework, which requires a huge infrastructure of judges, laws, police, prisons, and all that. That's the background to the fact that you can own property and then you can execute your firm in a certain way. So the overall, in my view, Islamic economics must strive towards equity, justice, and profit maximization, which, you know, I'm convinced from the verses of the Holy Quran is not the purpose of production, is not the purpose of a firm. It is to provide livelihood for society. So it's a completely different framework, even in the microeconomy, that you are providing livelihood for people. That's the purpose of your existence, not you're maximizing profit as a firm. And that's the macroscopic framework which determines the nature of private capital. And they may be apparently look the same, private capital in the Islamic economics and a capitalist economic, but they're vastly different. And the striving towards justice and equity for all is clearly a feature which doesn't figure in capitalist society. There is profit maximization, and the concentration and the centralization of capital is the primary driving force in the capitalist economies. So that's another whole issue of what's Islamic economics and how it actually, you know, comes into play. But I gave that a pass this time.
Yep, inshallah. It has been 2 hours now, so I think we're probably coming to the
Yes,
end.
we're running out of time.
Yeah, but don't worry, inshallah, we will have more series of discussions. A lot of scholars kind of agreed, you know, to be next presenters for our series.
Inshallah.
Prof
Abbas, you're back. Assalamu alaikum again. We were missing you.
Prof Abbas is back.
Yes.
Okay. Before I pass it back to Raimi, as a managing editor of the journal, together with Professor Saad, I thank you for your time, for listening. Again, you can probably understand from their presentation, from Prof Abbas and also from Prof Belal, that this journal, we want to set a different tone, we want to be different, and we are trying to basically challenge some of the current understanding and provide a new framework and pathway for Islamic finance. So that's the spirit. So inshallah, if you have good idea, good articles, please send it to us. And together we can actually make a difference with this journal. So Brother Raimi, over to you. So again, Prof Belal, Professor Abbas, Dr. Saad, and everyone who involved in these sessions, the Brother Raimi and Miss Lee as well, and not forgetting Dr. Pua as the chairman of this company for giving us this opportunity. And inshallah, we will see you again in our next series. Brother Raimi, over to you.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, I think Dr. Eskandar made a very good conclusion. So I think, okay, you look at we are still open for submission. So if any one of you, you can spread the word around that we are still accepting articles for the inaugural issue. Okay, thank you very much. Alhamdulillah. Inshallah, we'll meet again in another session, inshallah.
All right.
Assalamualaikum.
Thanks, everyone. Assalamualaikum. Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Prof Abbas. Thank you, Prof Belal.
Thank you, professors. Assalamualaikum.